started because, as I said before, we know that everybody is punctual when it comes to champagne, and I know never to stand between someone and a glass of champagne. Tonight, Kyri and myself, Kyla, many of you who we've met before, I'm just looking at the list of names and it'd be very surprising if we haven't met you, but we are hosting Thierry Wallaert, who is the export manager for the Maison for Louis Roederer. I'm just letting somebody else in, two more. Thierry, it is very nice to be with you. Of course, we would love to see you in person, but the state of the world is very different at the moment. And in actual fact, I think that this is a wonderful way of connecting because, you know, you don't often get to Australia. We don't often get to France. And for us to share a glass together, albeit virtually, is a lovely way to do it. So thank you very much for joining us. We know it is early morning in France. I'm sure that tasting champagne is a daily part of your role. But it's very nice for you to be with us. We're very excited about presenting the wines tonight. Louis Roederer has a very long history. You know, for me, when I think about champagne, we have the Grand Marques, we have the mid-tier family estates, we have the growers who are putting their independent stamp on winemaking in Champagne. But many people see Louis Roederer as being one of those prestige houses who's not perhaps as big as the others, but has this wonderful reputation of consistency and this wonderful reputation of excellence. So a great company for you to be part of. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kyla. I'm very happy to share with you this morning. This morning for me, this evening.
It's okay.
The way is a bit weird. A bit about the history, the style, and to comment the three wines that we have selected for tonight. So thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. That's the way we call it now.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know if we will have some questions, but I try to answer as best as I can.
That's wonderful. And on that point, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy for you to either type in your chat box if you have any questions along the way. You know, we are a closed group this evening, which is quite unusual for us. Normally, Thierry, when we do masterclasses, we do it openly, but we've decided to do a closed group tonight. So we're an intimate 30 guests,
all right.
25 guests. So feel free, someone, if you'd like to unmute and ask Thierry a question, then I'm more than happy to do that if Thierry's okay with that too.
I have one question before starting. How is the weather in Melbourne at the moment?
Probably the same as yours.
It's different. Yeah, it changes. Some days it's sunny when it's not supposed to be, and other days it's rainy when it's not supposed to be. Yeah. So no consistency.
Right? Very similar to us. So much rain at the moment. It's very grey, very grey. So we drink more champagne. That's another good excuse to drink more champagne.
It's the same with us. And, you know, there's probably people on this webinar who are from all corners of Australia, but we are located in Melbourne. Yeah. Someone was just saying, Ros Smith, who is who's been to Champagne and has been in our Champagne Club since 2014.
That's right.
A very dedicated champagne lover. She's saying it's beautiful in Perth today, and she's quite right.
Sure. Yeah.
Unfortunately for us, we live in that very southern tip of Australia, and we often don't get the best weather. So
Brisbane is great, Sydney's great, Perth.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But Melbourne, we drink champagne.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. So so let's start. How do you want to start?
Tell us a little bit about you, Thierry. Tell us about your sort of role within the house, how long you've been there, and your relationship with, you know, chef de cave, the team, the family, and
your perspective on Louis Roederer.
That'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So personally, I joined Louis Roederer more than 7 years ago. So I work at the export as an export manager. So my job is to look after exports of Louis Roederer in a few countries. I say few, but it's actually quite a lot. I think I look after myself with more than 35 countries. Louis Roederer is exported in more than 120 countries nowadays, wow, which is a lot, I would say. So that's the reason why it's true we can consider it as a grand mark, as we call it a grand mark, international grand mark. More than 120 countries. So I look after 35 countries, and I have both Europe or overseas country, which is good. It's a good balance. And I have small countries like bigger one. As the big one, for instance, I will look after, it will be, I will have USA. USA, it's historically the #1 export market for Louis Roederer. It has always been like that since
the US, yeah,
many years ago. Yeah, and still #1 export market. It's not easy at the moment, as you can imagine, on the US market. Not easy at all. There are so many things together at the moment. And then as main areas I look after, I will have like Germany in Europe, Russia. Russia is big for Louis Roederer. Maybe linked to the history of Louis Roederer. Louis Roederer has an history which is linked to Russia. I have all Scandinavia. I have, and as overseas, I would say my main market is Australia. So that's well balanced.
we have a puppy in the background who is terrorizing the house. So I'm sorry about
the distraction.
The distraction. No, he's a COVID puppy, so he's
all right.
Now, tell us a little bit about the history of the Maison. And ladies and gentlemen, while Thierry is talking about Louis Roederer as a Maison and its story, feel free to
drink.
Pop open. I was not going to say drink. But
have a start.
Please do. Please do.
Why not?
7 o'clock. Please open the Brut Premiere, and we can talk about that wine in a moment. But Thierry, a long history, a very long history. We're talking 1600s.
Yeah, Louis Roederer has a long history. It was first established in 1776, and it's called Louis Roederer since 1833, when Louis Roederer himself, he inherited from his uncle Louis, the house, the Champaign house, and he gave its name. So it's named Louis Roederer since 1833. But it was first established in 1776. So it's one of the oldest Champagne house. But what makes this house very special today in Champagne is that it's one of the last Champagne house which is still family owned and 100% independent. So today it's the 7th generation who look after Louis Roederer.
Incredible.
President Frédéric Rousseau, he comes directly from the family, and that's very important.
Want me to serve up?
So there have been a few generations in between times. I think Louis Roederer himself was very important in the history of Louis Roederer because he's the one who started to buy vineyards.
Yes.
At a time when people didn't want to hear about Champagne. Champagne was not as successful as it is today. But he thought he was a visionary, and he thought, let's buy vineyards. And of course, he bought vineyards in the best areas of the Champagne region. He only bought Grand Cru. So at that time, there was already a classification, a ranking of the different villages. It was not as precise as it is today. But still, there was a ranking. And so he only focused on Grand Cru villages. So that was I would say that was the real beginning of Roederer DNA, of what Louis Roederer is today. And today, Louis Roederer, we are proud to say that Louis Roederer owns 240 hectares. And these 240 hectares are only Grand Cru or Premier Cru.
What a gift.
Exactly. It's a beautiful gift from Louis Roederer himself, and then the next generation did.
Louis Roederer the second.
That's why it's brilliant with the families. From generation to generation, they kept the same way of working. So the idea is to have the best vineyards as possible and to express the terroir that we own. So today we have vineyards in the 3 main areas of the Champagne region, which are the Montagnes de Reims, the Vallée de la Marne, and the Côte des Blancs, in those three parts. And the vineyard is only of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. We have very, very few Pinot Meunier that we use exclusively for our Brut Nature, our zero dosage that I'm sure you heard.
Yes,
heard about.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's Philippe Starck cuvée.
Yeah.
But so that's the reality today. And also we can say that 125 hectares out of these 240 hectares are organic today.
This is an achievement, and this is something that I hope everybody is aware of, and it's been talked about in wine circles, that we've had a very strong movement from Jean-Baptiste Leclion to organic viticulture, and that is a big step for a maison with the land the size of ownership that Louis Roederer has to move towards biodynamics or biodynamics, as you say. It's a very bold move. And we talk about it in wine circles, but I really hope that the consumer understands just how big a move that is for a maison of your size to be so focused on biodynamic viticulture. You know, and I love this about the Louis Roederer Maison, that you're very traditional in some sense, but you're completely modern in another sense. And, you know, you've got this real respect for viticulture and time and the processes of making the wine, but the way that you turn out these cuvées, Cristal and the Philippe Starck, you know, cuvées, so thoroughly modern at the same time. But I really do hope that people understand the focus that JB puts on the viticulture.
Correct. Yeah. So it's also a long walk. Huh? Everything started in the early 2000. The idea of starting this organic project to help us, to allow us to do as much biodynamic as possible. So today, 125 hectares is already something. It's very important. 125 hectares, to get the certificate, you need to be 3 years in a row organic. So we will get, this is the third year with this 125 hectares. So beginning of next year, we will become, we'll receive this official certificate for organic. Nice. So we have 125 organic, and then we try to do as much biodynamic as we can based on this 125 organic, and the rest of the vineyard is sustainable. There's sustainability. That's what we call HVE. We have HVE certified. So that's the vineyards today of Louis Roederer, and that's very important to talk about it because it much explains about the DNA, the philosophy of the house, which is terroir, terroir, terroir expression as much as possible from the three main areas of this Champagne region.
Wonderful. So let's bring that down to the first cuvée and talk about the Brut Premier. It is the flagship of the Maison. It's so incredibly important that we get the first cuvée right, because for many, many, many people, they won't go to the next cuvée. They won't start with the 2011 Blanc de Blanc. They won't go to the Rosé. They won't try Cristal necessarily unless there is a connection to your non-vintage cuvée. So do you want to guide us through what's the philosophy of your wine? What are you trying to achieve? And what is the signature of the Brut Premier? For the Maison.
And just a quick little ad, if we can perhaps just decode the back label, just so everyone at home knows what the base year is.
Champagne nerd.
And that type of stuff.
Correct.
Just for a bit of fun.
Exactly. I'm sure you all have a smartphone on which you can load the Louis Roederer application.
Ah, superb. Yes.
And if you scan the QR code, which is on the back label, then you get some information about the Premier, such as what is the base wine, the main vintage, and that's important. I will explain to you why. And then when it was bottled and disgorged, of course, the proportion of each variety is also indicated. So yeah, the Brut Premier, you're right, it's a flagship for sure. It represents 70% of our total production. It's the only non-vintage of the range, but it's very important for sure. It's very important because it really shows the style of the house, the signature, which is of three words: freshness, elegance, and vinosity. important because I mean by vinosity that we make wine. We make a wine from the Champagne region. And how do we do to get this vinosity together with the freshness and the elegance? We will use, I mean, the main vintage is very important. The Brut Premier must let the main vintage speak. So the main vintage, which I imagine is 2015 now, the one you're tasting, it should be 2015. Mm-hmm. It will always represent 20 to, 80%, about 80% or 70% of the total blend, which is quite a lot. And the second reason why I like to say it's very vinous, it's a wine, is that the reserve wines, which are up to 6-7 years, are aged in old cask. So we have in our cellars this very big of 6,000 liters of old cask in which we will age the reserve wines, which will then represent 20 to 30% of the blend maximum. So we get through these two aspects, we get this very nice vinosity, but it gives a very nice structure. I think it has a nice structure, mm-hmm. Density. Brut Premier is very greedy. And I would say it's more than a classic non-vintage. It's somewhere between a classic non-vintage and a vintage champagne or Brut Premier. It's perfect as an aperitif. But it's also more than that. You can also appreciate a premier with food.
Agreed. And just for everybody who's watching, we're all at different levels of champagne appreciation and knowledge. But if everybody has a look at their label, you'll see that there's no year on the label. The non-vintage is a blend of multiple years. We're adding in a little bit of reserve wine, as Thierry says, and that reserve wine is sometimes the blend of many years together. It's completely up to the Maison, whether it's 2, 3, 4 years or 7 years or a Cellar system, and those reserve wines giving some consistency and some complexity to the wine. And that's where we're seeing a little bit of that vinosity, as you say, coming through, a bit more complexity. So is all the reserve wine in these large oak casks, Thierry, or is some of it held in stainless steel?
Yes, it's all the reserve wines in this old cask. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's typical of Louis Roederer, and there are very few champagne houses which will use this way of aging the
worked perfectly. It is actually a 2016 base.
2016?
Bottled
2016,
in 2017
okay.
And disgorged in 2019. All the information is there. It's great. I mean, the Australian markets, and I'm sure there are some other markets in the world that you're familiar with as well, Thierry, that they love to know more about what's going on in the wine. They want the information. They want details.
Correct.
And what I love about Louis Roederer is that they're quite upfront with it all compared to some of the more traditional houses that are out there that sort of try to hold it all back like a big secret, which is all well and good. I appreciate there needs to be some sort of mystery about wines, but in our age, a consumer wants to know more.
Of course, yes, I fully agree with you. And the more the time will go, the more we will be transparent. We'll try to be transparent about our wines for sure. Yeah. And so something we also I didn't mention about the Brut Premier, it's always about 40% Pinot Noir, mm-hmm. percent Chardonnay, and 20% Pinot Meunier. Yes. Most of the grapes, majority of the grapes for the Brut Premier come from the Louis Roederer vineyard. And then the remaining were bought from growers. So that's the reason why we are considered as a champagne house, Maison, we say Maison. But Brut Premier is the only quality bottle of the range where we will have some grapes from growers. Mm-hmm. So it's good to mention now that all the other quality of the range are all vintages, are all vintage champagne, including Cristal, our prestige cuvée. But for this cuvée, for all this cuvée, we will only use the grapes from Louis Roederer vineyard exclusively. So it's always Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, except, as I said, for the Brut Nature, where exceptionally we have a bit of Pinot Meunier also.
Where is the production facility, Thierry? Whereabouts in Champaign are you making the wine?
We have three press houses. We've got one in each main I was telling you about. So one in the Montagne des Reims, which will be in Verzenay. Verzenay is a Grand Cru where we have quite lots of vineyards. It's actually Verzy and Verzenay. It's actually where Louis Roederer started to buy vineyards himself more than 200 years ago.
Right.
We have another press house in Haï, so it's more toward Vallée de la Marne. And the third one is in the Côte des Blancs, known for the Chardonnay. We have 80 hectares in the Côte des Blancs.
Wow.
Even, I would say, more a Pinot Noir Champagne house. Historically, we can say that. We have also we have a majority of Pinot Noir which are in the Montagne de Reims in the Vallée de la Marne, but still 80 hectares of Chardonnay from the Côte des Blancs. Only Grand Cru. It's only Grand Cru, and the press house is in Avize. So Avize is a Grand Cru, very well-known Grand Cru village of the Côte des Blancs. So you see, that's where our vineyards are. I've got colleagues who are every day in the vineyards, and that I rarely see. During the lockdown, I had the chance to work a bit in the vineyards for 2 weeks because there was a lack of staff.
Because I know.
Yeah, for sure. There was no traveling anymore, so there was a lack of staff. Usually in April, March, April, there are lots of things to do in the vineyards. Lots of small walks, not easy, very physical, but very difficult.
Yeah.
And we need more people than usual than the rest of the year. So these people are meant to come from Eastern Europe, but they couldn't come. So people from Louis Roederer himself had to go to the vineyards.
That's great.
They had to do some hard work.
You didn't need your gym membership anymore. You could just go and work out in the vineyards.
It was fantastic because it was a good excuse to escape from the house at the time of the lockdown. The weather was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
A bit cold in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, I was in the vineyard. So I was based in des Blancs in Avize. 40 minutes drive, no traffic at all, every day, every morning. And then I could meet my colleague from the vineyards.
Oh, nice.
So that was
blue sky and sunshine, wasn't it? It was a beautiful harvest.
It was a beautiful harvest. Incredible. In 2 weeks, I could see, I saw the vines growing in 2 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
Especially the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay can grow really quickly compared to the Pinot Noir. So, yeah, but you know, I like to share this experience with you because it shows how much we're a family house. We're so much a family house, very well known, very international, but still family, and that's so important for us. So the Brut Premier, I don't know how you enjoyed it, but
beautiful wine.
It has a very long finish in the mouth. It has, which I really appreciate with the Brut Premier, is this elegance, this freshness, the long finish, which makes you want to have another glass, of course.
That's right.
But you are right. It does have some body. It does have some length. It does have some complexity there. And, you know, a little bit of spice. I can see that even though the barrels are large and they're old, I can still feel the influence, a little bit of spice, that little bit of texture that comes from aging a reserve wine in timber.
And just a quick note on this. I used to work in the wine industry in the UK when I was 23, 22, 23, it's about 18 years ago, 19 years ago. And Louis Roederer is one of my favorites because it was made slightly differently back then. I think they used to use more a Cellar approach where it was richer and fuller as a style of Brut. And Jean-Baptiste decided to change that and make it a much fresher style. And it's gone in a completely different direction, which I really, really like, and I think probably suits the house a lot more than what it used to be. But it's a sign of change that was welcome for sure.
Yeah, you're right. It's important what you're saying. Freshness is key for us today. It's key. So Jean-Baptiste was appointed chef de cave in '99, and he's been looking for freshness. And today, it's very important with the global warming, it's very important. It's more difficult to get the freshness. Huh? The ripeness is easier to get than in the past. Ripeness is important at the time when you harvest, but it's key also to have this freshness. It's more complicated because of the global warming, but the freshness is important because it means a lot. It means salinity, minerality. It's many things behind this word, and as I said, this long finish in the mouth really fulfill the palate with a long finish. You're drinking wine. You're really drinking. It's not natural at all. It makes the wine with much character, personality, and the elegance is of course also important because we don't want something which tired your palate. Huh? As I said, something we want you to have something that makes you want to have another glass. So freshness is key for us nowadays, and the organic also help for that, for sure.
That's fantastic. Well, talking of freshness,
we're going to open the Blanc
elegance.
de Blanc,
For
ladies
those
and
of
gentlemen.
you who have got the Blanc de Blanc, I think we should. This is a really interesting wine because as we move into the vintage range of Louis Roederer, I was reading recently that the pressure, if you like, the bar pressure can change depending on
correct. Yes.
Which we'll get to that in a second, which I'll bring some more details about that in a second. But the 2011 harvest was a very interesting harvest, specifically more so for Chardonnay than for Pinot Noir. And there's a lot of things that were happening. So please talk us through some of those key points with
Yes, that's right. You just mentioned about the weather. We've been talking about terroir, but at Louis Roederer we also talk about weather. In Champagne, you can have two types of weather: either oceanic, because we are not that far from the sea, so we can have the sea influence in Champagne region, or we can have a continental type of weather. Rather dry, sunny. So from one vintage to another one, it can be different. And the two cuvées vintage that we're drinking today are quite opposite, I would say, the 11 and the 13. Very opposite vintage. 11 was difficult. It was a difficult year. In the way that the summer was very difficult, was very oceanic influence, so with lots of rain, humidity. But it will be more a problem for the Pinot Noir, but not for the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay like when it's wet. So that's the reason why we could produce a Blanc de Blanc vintage 2011 that year. Blanc de Blanc, as you know, it means white wine of white grape variety, so it's 100% Chardonnay. And this Blanc de Blanc 2011 is the first Blanc de Blanc which is 100% from Aviz, the village I was mentioning earlier where we had a press house. So it's before that there was a blend of Aviz and two other Grand Cru villages of the Côte des Blancs. But for the Blanc de Blanc, now we focus on Aviz, which has specific Chardonnay with a bit more power, I would say, structure. So Aviz, 4 plots. This Champagne Blanc de Blanc is made from only 4 plots. 2 plots are located in the center of the village Aviz, and where I did work on them, by the way. And then two other plots, one north of Aviz facing Cramant, another beautiful Grand Cru villages, and the other plot is in the south of Aviz facing Auger, another Grand Cru village from Côte des Blancs. So the idea is to express the terroir of the Côte des Blancs, which is choke. So that's the reason why we get really much minerality, salinity on our, and that's what we want to have. So you know the Chardonnay is very lively. It's you get really lots of freshness with the Chardonnay. So to balance a little bit and to get this elegance, as I said to you, it's important also for us to be elegant. We have and that's what you were mentioning earlier, we have this a bit of lower pressure in our Blanc de Blanc. You can say like a Crémant style.
Yes.
You know that in the bottle of Champagne, the standard pressure is about 6 bar, 6 kilos, 6 bar, which is the same pressure as in a lorry tire. Here in our Blanc de Blanc, we'll get 4.5, about 4.5 pressure. So that this is also, there's lots of minerality, salinity, but it's also very creamy. It has a nice creaminess.
I'm glad you said that.
It's gorgeous.
It does. So for those of you who are having this at home, who've bought a bottle, there's something that happens with the bubbles. When you drop the pressure, you still have the same number of bubbles, no difference there. It's just how they sort of roll on the tongue. And it's a lot creamier in texture, which you described very well.
Can we talk about this in just a little bit more detail for everybody who's watching tonight? Within Champagne as a region, we know that there is a guiding set of principles on how the wines are made. And one of those principles is how much sugar is added just before the second fermentation, and how much sugar and yeast is added to the bottle at this stage. So we have the grape, we add some yeast, that turns that into still wine, and then we add a second dose of yeast and sugar into the bottle, which creates secondary fermentation inside the bottle. How much sugar is added at that point will equate to how much pressure, we talk about it in terms of bars, how many bars of pressure we end up with in a champagne bottle, and that equates to a bubbliness, shall we say. And by putting less sugar in at that stage, just before that second fermentation, or to trigger the second fermentation, we can actually have a softer effect on the wine. So this is an interesting, and it's fairly uniform in Champagne that we're looking for 6 bars of pressure, but in fact, certain winemakers will put in less sugar and have a softer, more Crémant style of wine, as is being done here.
Which opens it up to, you know, different sort of food pairings. It becomes more gastronomic in its approach.
Silkier on the palate.
So exactly correct. As I say, we make wine from Champagne, so we like you to enjoy also with food if you like. So we like to have this soft, elegant bubbles. Also, I would say also all the rest of the range has a little bit less of 6 kilos. That's what Jean-Baptiste Caillon, our cinemaster, will tell you. We have also for every cuvée a little bit less of 6 kilos, and so that you can really enjoy the champagne as a wine. So more on the Blanc de Blanc, and as you say, Kyla, that's right. It's due to a lower dosage in what we call the liqueur de tirage, which is at the time of the bottling. So you had yeast and sugar. So we will have a lower dosage of a few grams below than the standard one. And then so that at the time of the fermentation in the bottle, you get less CO2 and less pressure. So this is something which is the law in Champagne say that you have to have a minimum 3.5, generally speaking. That's because everything is
governed.
yes, exactly. In the Champagne, you have to follow strict rules. So that's what it says. So you're free to do what you like, and that's what we decided to do for our Blanc de Blanc, and also for our Brut Nature, by the way. Time I speak about the Brut Nature. That's the 2 cuvées of the range at Louis Roederer where we get this Crémant style. We can say that like that. It's like a Crémant style in terms of pressure.
So the wine becomes more important almost than the bubble, and that's why the glass is very important, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you have the Emperor Champagne glass, which is a wider bodied glass. You might note that Kyri and I are drinking out of an Italese white wine glass.
Actually a Zalto.
It's a Zalto. I apologize.
Zalto.
A Zalto, an Austrian white wine glass. And I think that it's important to, when you've got a champagne that has had some age, that is vinous, it's perfectly fine to serve that in a bigger white wine glass, because it's not always about maintaining the bubble. And when we serve champagne in a narrow glass, it is about preservation of the bead, preservation of the bubble, and not about the exacerbation of the aroma. So what you want is something a little bit bigger and a little bit broader to show the vinosity of the wine.
Question. We had a question actually whilst we were talking and describing this wine so eloquently, is food pairing. We had a question about what food would you recommend with this? Now, there's something that pops straight into my mind.
I've got something in my mind.
And I'm sure you've got, but Thierry, you've traveled the world over
and
you've probably been into many
country.
Restaurants. So I think it's great if you would enlighten us with what you've had this with recently that was a great pairing or something that you'd recommend.
Oh, you mean with the Blanc de Blanc?
With the Blanc de Blanc, yeah.
Yeah, the Blanc de Blanc. Oh, it's as I say, this is now it's only Avis, and Avis it's Chardonnay, which are I rather have structured bodies. So it's absolutely nice to enjoy with a fish from the sea or fish from the river. Yes, that's something which is beautiful to combine with, of course. Yes. With the minerality, the salinity, you can also appreciate with oysters. Why not?
Yeah.
Even I would say like the Brut Premier we had at the very beginning is fantastic. Oysters.
Exactly.
Huh?
Yeah.
I just had it at the restaurant 100 meters from the office where I'm staying now. The other day with one of my colleagues, we had a bottle of Brut Premier with many oysters. It was so beautiful. I always enjoy this combination.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are many possibilities for sure. But well, of course, with the Blanc de Blanc, it's mostly on fish, seafood. Huh?
Yeah.
Kyri, what was in your mind?
I'm on the same path as you. I'm sort of thinking probably more down the path of sort of Japanese cuisine. Yuzu came into my mind. Even cucumber, something cool and fresh, but to really give it a background for the minerality more than and the freshness of Avis, as opposed to sort of overpowering the dish or anything like that. So
for me, I'm having scallops.
Scallops, I was going to say
with Spanish ham, with jamon.
Jamon, there you go.
Because you get this saltiness, this texture that kind of combines. Like a really
cross-pollination.
Well, this beautiful seared scallop wrapped in a very fine Spanish jamon.
Mm.
Yeah, scallops. Yeah, scallops is also nice with crystal. But coming back, but what you mentioned about Japanese cuisine, that's a very good point. Maybe it explains why Japan has become our second export market today.
Oh, they'll probably be number one soon. I
wanted to mention that, but I'm very proud to be so also present in Japan. Japan is a big champagne market, and we are also doing very well.
Yeah.
But it's true, one of the reasons why Japan is good for champagne is that the cuisine is very beautiful, and it goes very well with champagne.
Yeah.
Thierry, we have a question, and I think it's a good one. And I think this question is more pertinent than ever because we have global warming and the wines are getting riper, and we can release still wines from Champagne. We have red wines coming out of the Champagne region. We had a question from James who said, would you ever release a still Chardonnay? Is it allowed, a still white wine from Champagne?
Yeah, sure. Of course you can. Yes, it is allowed to do. Still wine from Champagne is allowed. It's called Coteau Champenois.
I've never seen a white though. I've always seen a red.
Yeah, you see it in red. Mostly it's in red, but you can also do a white. And we are planning to release. We're planning to release still red wine from the Champagne region, Coteau Champenois. Our cinema has been working on it for a few years. Yeah, it's not a secret, I would say. This is something we're planning to do for the next year, and it will be together with the white wine. So, the quantity is going to be very small.
Please don't forget us in Australia because we get very
no, we won't forget you.
Quantities of everything. We love champagne. We're number 6 in the world. I'm putting my hand up for an allocation.
the red and white, and Sally McGinn, who I see is don't worry, she will put pressure on me to make sure she can get a few bottles of this Coteau Champenois from Louis Roederer. So this is something, I'm very happy to announce to you. It's a good question. I tasted it last year, the red one, not the white one. Yeah. So you see, it's not easy to taste. It's going to be launched, but it was amazing. It was a beautiful Pinot Noir.
How long would you age it for in the cellar? Because it's completely different methodology to aging champagne or still wine. You know, generally still wine is released so quickly. Does it need?
It's not that old. It's not that old actually. It's not a very old vintage. It's not that old. We're not doing old vintage on some specific champagne of the range. Like maybe you heard about the 2002 Cristal late release. Maybe you heard about the Vinaitech of Cristal, which is something new that we've started to launch last year, 2 years ago, with the 95 and the 96, and now this year with the 99. That's where we do a more long aging process and learning. We want to learn about how it's always. We're also a kind of laboratory Champagne house. We like to learn more every day about the terroir, to challenge ourselves, learn about the terroir, and the aging. Aging is one thing in which we learn a lot. So the Vinaitech, just to illustrate what I've been saying, the Vinaitech is a very special aging of 3 different periods. On lees, sur pointe, which is sur pointe means
on the lees, exactly. On the neck,
and then after disgorgement in our cellars. So 3 different periods, which makes together 20 years aging for that cuvée, for that Vinaitech. So yeah, there are many things we can talk about for sure.
It's a very interesting, and look, we watch, and many of you who are joining us tonight, you should follow the chef de cave. The chef de cave being the winemaker, the chef of the caves. Jean-Baptiste Leclion, in our opinion, is one of the more interesting winemakers of Champagne, is he not? That's an understatement.
He is. Some of my colleagues who are journalists and reviewers and just absolute champagne nerds, spend a lot of time with JB Fizz, as he's known on Instagram or
Follow
IG.
him on Instagram. And, fascinating.
And he's just a great communicator in the most humble and I think a calm way. And he's always tweaking, learning, and trying new things,
experimenting, constantly. Opening old bottles, researching,
and generous. That was the other thing I was going to say. Very generous with what he shows and wants to sort of explore the realms of time with people who understand it and communicate it amongst as many different channels as
But I think JB is such a great communicator that you almost see the workings of his mind, where at times he's completely focused on the viticulture and viniculture of the wines, and other times he's more about communication. And he's such an open communicator on Instagram that it's very interesting to follow his journey, to get a real insight on what it means to be the chief winemaker of one of the top champagne brands in the world. And JB does it with such grace and such panache, but he's so open and honest in the way that he communicates, and it's wonderful to follow.
Definitely, there's a transparency in what he does. There was a couple of things that we sort of skipped in terms of questions, but I'll cover them now. The QR code for the 2011 didn't work for some reason, but that's okay. We know it's all 2011, all Chardonnay from all the best plots in Aviz.
You can talk to the marketing team, Thierry, about that one.
The rosé did work, so you guys can try that. And then we've got a question from James regarding what is Vinaitech. Now, from what we just discussed, James, Vinaitech is basically an extended aging of the Cristal. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
It's been aged like this, sur pointe.
With the yeast in the bottle.
With the yeast in the yes. Or in the neck here. So it's not laid flat and aging this way. It's aging this way.
There's also this way. There's also the flat
way as well.
There's first the flat one, exactly.
Yeah.
For a few years. Okay. Then Yeah, exactly. So and then we do for the Vinaitech, we do also the one you're showing now with the as sur pointe. So that means the bottle is in point, exactly. And then after disgorgement, another few years. So it's everything 20 years, and then it's separated roughly from 8 years each for each period. But it can change from one vintage to another one.
And so, I just want to mention to everyone there as well, Louis Roederer as a house, when they do the post-disgorgement aging, that is also quite rare. Not many houses that I know of do this, where they allow the wine to develop after it's been disgorged before it then gets released into the market. So think about how long they've had it, and they're like, no, we're still going to hang on to this because we want it to be just right when it reaches the market. That's the kind of level of tweaking and tuning, if you like, they want for their wines at that level. And it's often missed when you're spending upwards of, $400, perhaps $500, up to $800 for the rosé, where there's no real understanding as to why it's so expensive. And part of that is those processes and it's time. So you're buying an investment, if I put it in those terms.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it gives still very fresh, and I would say for all vintage young wines, which can age for many years. Exactly, through the process. Yes.
Talking freshness and aging and youngish wines, shall we move to the rosé?
Yes, the rosé.
2013.
I'm still completely in love with my 2011 Blanc de Blanc. I'm finding it very hard to move on.
It's getting better as time, as it opens up, as it warms up. I've always found that with any good champagne.
And you're absolutely right to use this beautiful glass, this open glass. And I would say I would recommend the same for the rosé.
Yes.
I would recommend you to use a Burgundian style of glass. It shows the wine the rosé always shows much better from my own experience in such a glass, a Burgundian style of glass. So the rosé,
tell us about the rosé. This is fascinating because I was reading about it being an infusion, of Premier Pinot, of Chardonnay from Chouilly, and co-fermentation. Now, these things you don't see again very often in Champagne. And we'd love to learn more about what that means.
First thing, just like the Blanc de Blanc, all the grapes come from Louis Roederer vineyards. So we behave like a wine growers, in a way you can say that. And this time we have always, for the rosé, we always have about 2/3 of Pinot Noir and 1/3 of Chardonnay.
Right.
The Pinot Noir always comes from one specific village, which is called Cumières. Cumières is in the Vallée de la Marne. Why in Cumières? Because here we have south facing Pinot Noir. And we believe to make a good rosé, you need very ripe, mature, concentrated Pinot Noir. That's why we will use this south-facing Pinot Noir. So when we harvest, we usually start in Cumières because that's where we will reach the right ripeness. So and the Cumières is along the Marne River, and so they also benefit of the reflection of the sun on the river to get this nice maturation. So that's the first thing. And then to balance this very ripe Pinot Noir, to get this freshness, we will blend this Pinot Noir with Chardonnays from the Côte des Blancs back to the Côte des Blancs in a village called Chouilly, where I worked in this village, Chouilly.
You know them well.
It's the Grand Cru village, north of the Côte des Blancs, and these Chardonnays are north facing, so they are fresh Chardonnay. So that they will bring this freshness to the rosé cuvée. So how do we make our rosé? It's completely different, very different. We can say it's a macération, like a saignée, skin contact method to start with, because you know that in Champagne you have two allowed methods, either macération, skin contact, or blending two wines together, red wine, Coteau Champenois, we were mentioning earlier, with your classic cuvée to get the pink color. So at Roederer, we use the skin contact method, but not the classic one. It's a different one. What we do, when we produce our rosé, we always harvest the Pinot Noir and Cumière in the afternoon. We don't bring the grapes to the press house. We bring the grapes to our cellars as they are, and they will stay in a room for over the night in a cold temperature room. And then the day after, we will do some sorting to keep the best Pinot Noir. We do some sorting, and after we finish this sorting, we will bring this Pinot Noir in a tank, where we will start what we call a cold soaking process. As you say, it's infusion like tea. It's a cold soaking infusion from 5 to 8 days, depending on the vintage. And then at the end of this period, this process, we get the juice of Pinot Noir, and we will blend this juice of Pinot Noir with the Chardonnay juice, the Chardonnay which comes from Chouy.
Still unfermented at this stage, just juice.
Correct. Very important. Thank you for the question. It's still unfermented. So actually, we are blending two juices together. We are not blending two wines together. We are blending two juices together. So exactly. So the blend is made before the first fermentation. So you see, that's very different, very exceptional. And this method that we use to produce our rosé was first used at the time when we launched Cristal Rosé. The previous generation, Jean-Claude Rousseau, father of our today President Frédéric, launched Cristal Rosé in 1974, and he decided to this way of winemaking for the Cristal Rosé. So then we thought, okay, let's use the same method for our classic rosé of the range, which is always vintage. So you see,
that's very complicated.
Yeah, it's a bit of complicated. It took me a lot of time to understand. So,
and I don't know any other house that does
but
this.
the idea why we use this technique, for you, what is nice to remember is that through this technique, you avoid tannins. Mm-hmm. You get the natural aromas of the Pinot Noir more easily. You get this freshness, and this is all again very much in line with our DNA, with our style, with our signature, with our philosophy. So
amazing balance between being very pretty and elegant, but also got this complexity and some drive. It's a beautiful.
And also the color with this maceration, this cold soaking infusion technique, we control the color also.
You're absolutely right. You can see straight away. I mean, it's like a pale sort of onion skin color.
Correct. Yeah.
But all the characteristics of Pinot Noir is definitely there. It's present, and I think there's a certain texture, so to speak, that marries these two grapes when you are co-fermenting juices. It's one thing that I did learn during winemaking, that some of these rare examples, there's a handful of producers that do this. There's actually a producer near Cumière called Geoffroy, and Geoffroy makes basically exactly like a 50-50 style, and it's on this sort of level of complexity and texture.
It's a
bit deeper in color, but there's only a handful of them that make it. So really quite an unusual.
It's not easy.
No, it's really quite difficult.
It's not easy to achieve consistency.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's true. But and another thing also is that we want to express the terroir. There's always keep in mind the terroir expression of Cumière, which is clay and limestone. Mm-hmm. So when you concentrate, while you taste the rosé and you concentrate, you will see that in your mouth it will be horizontal. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you compare to the Blanc de Blanc, where it's choke terroir,
linear.
It's more vertical. Yeah, exactly. It's more vertical. It's fleshy. It's different. That's due to the terroir expression. That's important for us also. So
that's a really, really great way to explain champagne or wine, because we're talking about wines here, as much as there's bubbles in it, there is still a wine. And for those of you at home that are tuning in, when you do go to Champagne, or if you ever come to Champagne with us, what you'll see is a lot of amazing producers talk about this linearity, horizontal, roundness.
It's more than that.
But it's a descriptor to give an idea of dimension.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So at first, people think that champagne is to taste. So when someone first looks at a wine as a consumer, if you were to taste a wine, where does it go? It goes directly to your mouth. In fact, that's the last place it goes for a winemaker. For the winemaker, it's visual. Number one, he will look at the wine. Number two, and probably more emphatically and importantly, he will smell the wine. He'll spend probably more time with his nose in the glass than he will with his wine on his palate. But when we do get to the all-important palate, yes, we are looking for certain taste structure, but it's more than that. A winemaker and his counterparts, and there are many who are in his inner circle or her inner circle of confidence, are looking for dimension, are looking for height, width, texture, layer, length, weight, and complexity. And when you finally join us in Champaign, and when you spend time with winemakers who on a daily basis, sometimes 2 to 3 hours a day, are looking at either Vin Clair, which is a still white wine in the Champagne region, or disgorging a bottle, or looking at a finished product, the amount of knowledge and complexity that goes into achieving what they're trying to perfect for you is absolutely astounding. The way that they talk about the height, width, dimension of the wine on the palate, you think champagne is champagne. You think they turn out a vintage and that's all there is. But there is so much thought, so much consideration, so much pondering, so much complexity that goes into making every single bottle that your little minds will burst. It's boggling, isn't it? It's astounding.
It's like each house has got a famous composer, and they're putting together their masterpieces every year, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So we get to hear it, see it, and taste it.
But you will never look at champagne the same way again. It is not a chance that your champagne. It's not a chance that your champagne tastes the way it does. There is no. As much as we're working with Mother Nature, there is a craftsmanship that goes into each and every bottle and each and every vintage and each and every wine. And that craftsmanship is so incredibly considered.
Yes, craftsmanship. That's something for us, it means a lot also, craftsmanship at Roederer. Very much, yes. I
was just going through some of our lovely guests who are joining us tonight, and I can see you having your dinner and you're having a sip of champagne and you're eating some more, and I love it. It's great. I was just going to perhaps ask some of the guests if they had any questions and bring it to them to see if they could find out some things from you, Thierry. So guys, feel free to ask questions. I will answer one from Andrew Donaldson, who asked about why the bottles are sur point, and I can't do it now because I've opened the bottle, but to answer your question, Andrew, the lees are minimized in terms of their contact when it comes to being laid at a point as opposed to being laid flat, which is the maximum surface area contact. It's actually the least surface area contact. So it allows for a longer period of time to age without so much interaction of yeast lees to answer that.
To the wine.
Yeah. Any favorites so far? I'm sort of loving them all.
I love them all too.
The rosé just got me though. I was quite thrown back by that one. I really, really love it.
But there's a delicacy to it, and you would think if you're going to macerate a wine that you would have more depth of the rosé, but it's done in such a gentle way that it's very elegant and very particular.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's a very unique rosé, very unique because of the way we make it, and I explained to you. and also because it's a vintage. There are a few rosé champagne which are vintage. And 2013, we didn't speak much about that year, but it's opposite to 2011. In 2011, we harvested very early, like this year. This year was historically early, like we started on the 22nd of August. And in 2011, we started this, but at the same time, I think, around the 22nd of August. Whereas 2013, it's a very late harvest, October, which is rare.
Is it some here in your days, October vintage?
Yeah. Which today harvesting, our grandparents were harvesting in October. It almost never happened anymore. It's earlier and earlier, and this year is again a very good example of how early it was with on the 22nd of August. So you see, it's two opposite vintages. One, the 11 is more oceanic, and the 13 is more continental weather. And the summer was beautiful. It was such a beautiful summer. Spring, winter were not easy, not so good, especially springs, but summer was beautiful. So it allows us to make a nice Pinot Noir rosé with this majority of Pinot Noir from Cumière.
Thierry, we have a couple of questions, and one is from Jerry. And if you don't know Gerard Nolan, he is our sales representative from Louis Roederer in Australia.
Joval.
And between us, we have a ranking system for our sales representatives.
Well, an
unofficial ranking system. And Jerry is our sales representative of the month. He's going to get a T-shirt for that. He's very good. He's very good.
Yeah.
And
you guys.
You are wonderful.
Welcome to the party, Gerard.
That was Jerry?
That's Jerry.
Jerry.
So,
congratulations, Jerry.
Thank you. Sorry I was a little bit late. I had a previous tasting, but thank you for having me, and apologies for being late. I was very, very excited.
You just got to tell him that you're still at the office and we would have believed you.
Yeah, I'm working late.
Yeah.
I've been driving bootfuls of Louis Roederer out to clients who want it. No, it's true. At Emperor Champagne, we have 350 champagnes by the bottle. We deal with many, many champagne houses. We deal with every representative of champagne in Australia. And there is a vast difference in the representation like there is in the wines. And I would like to say that Jerry's representation is as good as the Louis Roederer wine. So well done, Jerry. You're very good at your job.
In fact, the whole team do an amazing job.
They do.
Tristan's joining us tonight, who I think he's still on. He's somewhere.
He's there. He's somewhere there.
And Sally.
I'm still here. Thank you. Thanks, guys. You're very, very kind. You've got
no camera on. I couldn't see you. That's why. And
he's naked in the bath with his Louis Roederer, just like we all should be.
Of course, Sally's been part of the team for a very, very long time. Got a very close affiliation with the house and the brand. So they've done great things.
We're not pandering to their egos. There is a question.
That's all right.
Jerry wanted to know privately, do you have a favourite, Thierry? Now, we're not going to tell anyone at the Maison. This is just between us. If you are off duty, what are you drinking? From the Louis Roederer Maison, of course.
Yes, of course. It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question. Because actually it depends very much. And it really depends how I feel like, if I'm in a good mood or not. I'm always in a good mood, of course, but I have to say that. But the weather like, what time is it? It really, there's many things which I like. I like all those cuvées, honestly. I like all those cuvées. But it's difficult to say. It's very much difficult to say. To me, the three estates wine that we have, the Brut Vintage from the Montagne de Reims, the Rosé that we just had from the Baie-la-Mar, the Blanc de Blanc from the Côte de Blanc are beautiful, all very different in terms of terroir expression, but so similar with the freshness and the elegance and the vinosity. The Brut Premier, the Brut Premier. I drink so much Brut Premier, but almost only from the Magnum. You should drink Brut Premier from the Magnum because for many reasons, it's a perfect size for two people if only one drink.
Yes, which is always good.
The wine, as I said to you earlier about the Brut Premier, the Brut Premier must let the main vintage speak. So if you wait some years, you can drink it right now, of course, when you bought the Brut Premier. But if you decide to age in your cellars a little bit of years, the main vintage will speak louder, and it's become really interesting, and especially from the Magnum. From the Magnum, if you buy a Magnum and you wait for a few years, believe me, you will be so impressed by the quality of the champagne. You will have this freshness again, this elegance, and this vinosity. You will have the impression of drinking a great champagne, a great wine from Champagne. So that's something I like to do.
Okay,
honestly.
So shall we say your overall favorite, and it's a good one, is the Brut Premier on Magnum?
Oh, Brut Premier on Magnum, I love that. I find it
So
that's pretty
so
good.
easy to do.
ladies and gentlemen drinking at home, if you haven't heard me say this in a masterclass before, or Kyri, double the volume is not double the volume. You know, what we get is a smaller air to wine ratio. The way the wine breathes is completely different. The winemaker will intentionally age this for a longer period of time. So you're getting more a vintage style of cuvee in a non-vintage wine. And a Magnum is a very special occasion. Thierry is right in that it's the perfect wine for drinking when there's two of you, but only one is partaking.
One of the other great things that people often forget or skip past. This is a base year of 2016. Yes, we've discovered that from our little app. Now, if you look at Louis Roederer Magnum and you use your little scan, you'll probably find that might be from 2012 or 2013.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Because it's less made and fewer sold.
Yeah.
So the movement in the market is a little bit slower than, or much slower than.
It's true. Yeah, that's true.
1050. So there's actually some gems to be found in the Magnum world. So hunt and you will find, my friends.
Okay, we've got
and from a double bottle, that's how we also call it, the Magnum, the double bottle. That's nice. No, I'm too lazy to stand from my sofa to get another bottle. So longer with the Magnum, you have more time. And also, it's so elegant, a Magnum. It's so beautiful.
It's so nice.
Your glass from a Magnum, it has so much elegance. So.
It is so nice. I agree with you. We've actually had quite a few inquiries this week for big bottles of Louis Roederer.
Jerry will be talking.
We have another question, and this is an interesting one about the increase in demand for Louis Roederer during the pandemic. Now, I have to say that for us in Australia, we've sold a lot of champagne. Obviously, we're a retailer. We're up 400% this year with champagne sales. We hear a lot of press about the sales of champagne being down. There's a juxtaposition of communication in the market. We're also having a hard time getting enough champagne supply, and that's not just Louis Roederer, it's many houses. What is the real story here in terms of champagne sales? I mean, you know, COVID has had an enormous impact on our lives. We have no weddings, we have no tennis, we have no racing, we have no grand events, but we're finding it hard to source champagne, to get enough champagne, and we're seeing a rise, but there's conflicting news in terms of champagne sales at the moment.
Yeah, but for sure, it's true that because of this, it's still too early actually to say about that. It will be easier beginning of next year after we finish this special year to see what exactly happened. It's still a bit too early to talk about that, but for sure, the fact that we've been locked down, especially in March, April, and May, it was the sales, the champagne sales went down, especially during these 3 months of lots of countries were in a strict lockdown, without any restaurants open anymore. You know, restaurants, where we call the on-trade, on-premise, is of course important for champagne consumption. So what made the consumption going down? The fact that the restaurants were closed and then they were allowed to reopen again, but then they have to keep these strict sanitary barriers with less people in the restaurants, more distance between the customer, etc. So for sure, it didn't help. Less traveling also, so less people in the hotels, in the palace hotels, like a city like Paris, which has lots of beautiful palace hotels.
And there are Champagne in Paris
at the moment. And then the travel retail also. When you are in an airport, you can buy champagne. That's something which is also important for the champagne industry to sell through the travel retail. So everything is stopped. But in the other hand, it's not as dramatic as we could imagine, because as you just said, Kyla, in the retail, it's been really successful. So I'm glad that you've been successful. And it's interesting what you said, because it's exactly what I've been experiencing by discussing with our distributors from all around the world. The one who are very strong in retailing or B2C, sell when they sell directly to the end consumers, did very well because you yourself, myself, we want to drink, we want to enjoy a glass of champagne, we want to keep drinking. So what do? We go, we order from the retail or from the internet, and then it goes, and we drink more than usually, because champagne is perfect to forget when time is a bit difficult. There are some
and lift your spirits as well.
yeah, exactly. It helps you to forget about this bloody virus.
Yes, and look, it's been different for every market, and it's been different for every country. And for me, it's been a challenging year not sharing the joys of Champagne. You know, I'm so used to speaking, and Kyri, to standing up and speaking to a room full of people about the joys of Champagne. And I'm so glad that we've had virtual tastings at a minimum, where we can see our customers and our club members all around Australia, where we continue to enjoy the virtues of Champagne. It's all right. And we have had many bottles of champagne during this period, and our customers have had many bottles of champagne during this period. It's been a challenging year, but an interesting one, and we've managed to get through it, puppies and all. One of our clients commented on the reduction of yield in Champagne this year. One of the really interesting concepts, and a lot of people won't understand this, is that when the economy is in a difficult time, the CIVC, who are the Champagne Society, who govern the rules of Champagne, the Champagne Police, will limit the yield, limit the quantity of grapes that can be taken from one's vineyard. And for me, that doesn't make any economic sense, because you might release that cuvee 8 years down the line in a flourishing year of an economy,
like the 08,
like 08, for example. But it's very difficult for a lot of people to comprehend why we would restrict the quantity of grapes coming off the vine. For me, it makes
it's very easy. It's very easy to understand. It's only because, okay, the wine will be released, you're right, in 3 years' time. But the yield, the quantity you're allowed to harvest, it's also a cost for everyone, for the champagne houses which have to buy the grapes from the growers. That's the reason why there are champagne houses. You know that the vineyards in Champagne, 90% of the vineyards belong to growers. They own the land. So the champagne houses have to buy the grape from the growers to produce the bottles. And so they buy a lot. It's a big investment for the champagne houses to buy so many grapes from the growers. And the grapes are really expensive in Champagne today. It's about almost €6 for 1 kilo. It's a lot. And so these champagne houses, they have to pay for the grapes straight after they were delivered. There are 4 different times where they have to pay the growers. So there's one the first time is the same year at the harvest, and then 3 times the year after. So it's a lot of money that they have to pay. Whereas at the same time, when there's a crisis, economic crisis, and the sales go down, they make less turnover. So it's more financial. It's a more financial situation. So they can be in an uncomfortable financial situation. So the CIVC, the Comité de Champagne, try to find the best balance. So the growers which I can understand. They don't want to have a smaller harvest yield, because the more grape they can sell, the more money they can make also, and they need money to survive. But the customer, the champagne houses, at that moment, they don't have enough cash to pay for such big amounts of amounts of money. It's lots of money when you buy a grape from growers. So you see, they need to find an in-between solutions. And this year harvest, I'm sure you heard about that, was lower than the
lower yield.
Yeah, it was a bit lower. So we went to 8,000 kilo instead of 10,200 kilos last year. But we also put some other rules to make it aside, to make it more easy for everyone. But that's what I like with Champagne. At the end of the day, the growers and the houses always find solutions. Of course, everybody's not happy with the last solution, but everybody find the solutions, and that's what makes also Champagne strong.
I'm so sorry, we're taking the puppy who's running right into the house.
He's looking for a magnum.
Oh my God!
He loves the corks.
Very randy puppy, and I'm just trying so hard to focus on all of what you're saying.
Well, he's happy to
just going bonkers eating potatoes. Oh, Jesus Christ.
And never mind, it's all in a day's work.
It is, you're right. Well, that was really, really good.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to thank Thierry for his time.
And the team, everyone, thank you.
Oh, Tango.
There you go, mate.
Ladies and gents, thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure to have everyone tonight. We really hope that everybody is on their way out of COVID. We know France is in a particularly difficult period, but we do hope that is almost the end of what has been a very turbulent year. Poor Melbourne is almost out of what's been a long-standing lockdown.
We're going to get through this, bloody hell.
We will get through this. Thierry, yes. It's been wonderful to speak to you and to get your insight on the house. You know, I always say to people when I speak to them that you know the wines, but I think it really helps to understand the wine more when you know the people from the Maison. And there's so many things that are unspoken when you drink a bottle of champagne. And for me, drinking a bottle of champagne is not just about the consummation of the glass, it's about drinking history. You know, you have a family that dates back to the 1700s. You have an entrepreneurial founder like Louis Roederer and his son, you know, the foresight to buy fruit and to focus on Grand Cru, and the evolution of a winemaker who has taken a big risk in moving his vineyards at such speed to organics and biodynamics, well ahead of the curve of any other Grand Marque. You know, there's so much, there's so much that goes into every bottle, and you can't convey that sometimes as a retailer. It's very difficult to do. And it's very nice to have you presenting that to our clients and to our guests in a human way, in a very personalized way. So we thank you for that. And we do hope that there is an opportunity for us in the future to come and visit you at the Maison, and for everybody to see the beauty that is Champagne. I think that when you go to Champagne, your perspective on Champagne changes. You understand the craftsmanship, you understand the time that goes into every bottle, but more than that, you understand the personality of each and every house, and the people behind it make it what it is. And you might have hundreds of years of history, but you still have a human touch that makes every bottle and every year and every vintage, and that's very important. And you're all part of that, and we thank you very much for your knowledge and for your contribution this evening.
Thank you very much, Kyla. Thank you very much, Kyri. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining it. Thank you, the Emperor. Thank you for your support. And thank you also to Red and Wine, of course, for Jerry and Tristan. I was very happy to share this moment with you. It's a bit, it's for an export manager like me, it's important to talk about the wines to customers. I love it. and without traveling at the moment, it doesn't happen very much. Without visits from you also as well. So yeah, hopefully we can meet as soon as possible, either in Australia or here in Champaign, where you are very much welcome. You can come whenever you like. We would be happy to welcome you and to show more about us, vineyards, cellars. Enjoy a nice lunch with only magnums.
I'll hold you to that.
That is something that we can think about as we drift off to sleep tonight.
We'll try and find the oldest ones in the cellar.
Ladies and gentlemen, stay safe. Thierry, thank you very much for your hospitality.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Stay safe too. Take care.
From the team.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
And we will see everybody very, very soon.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys.